We don't
You
have
said
a
that you said the
schedule yet,
president
but we're-
violated federal law, and what federal law did he violate by sending National Guard troops to Chicago?
The tension inside the Senate Judiciary Committee just exploded. Senator John Cornyn went head-to-head with Dick Durbin over President Trump's controversial move, sending the Texas National Guard straight into Chicago. What started as a routine hearing, it spiraled fast into a full-blown battle about presidential power, the Constitution, and, let's be real, a lot of political grandstanding. So, what actually went down?
At our last meeting last week, two of my Republican colleagues defended President Trump's unlawful attempt to deploy the Texas National Guard to my home state of Illinois. I want to take a moment to respond. One colleague compared Trump's actions to President Eisenhower, deploying the 101st Airborne Division to desegregate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. Most of my colleagues here are too young to remember the Civil Rights Movement, but there is no comparison between Arkansas's massive resistance to desegregation and Illinois' peaceful and lawful opposition to this administration's immigration policy. Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus called up the Arkansas National Guard to block black students from entering Little Rock Central High School in defiance of the Supreme Court decision in Brown versus Board of Education. The 101st Airborne, dispatched by President Eisenhower, was deployed to ensure these students, the Little Rock Nine, as they were known, could safely attend school.
Durbin came out swinging, calling Trump's action unlawful and comparing it to past presidents who rolled tanks into states for totally different reasons. He made it clear, Illinois wasn't breaking federal law and this wasn't the 1950s. To Durbin, this was about federal overreach, not upholding justice. He threw shade at Trump-appointed judges who'd already ruled against similar deployments, saying America's always resisted military involvement in local affairs.
They weren't tear-gassing pastors, journalists, and police officers, as the federal agents are now doing in Broadview, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. They didn't rappel from Black Hawk helicopters in the middle of the night to swarm an apartment building, breaking down doors, rousting families out of bed, zip-tying and detaining U.S. citizens, including children, as federal agents did in Chicago's South Shore neighborhood 2 weeks ago. That is a fact. And then the senior senator from Texas compared my opposition to Texas National Guard being deployed to Illinois, to southern states defending the institution of slavery. He said, and I quote, attempting to resurrect a long-rejected idea associated with slavery in the early days of the United States, that the state and local officials can nullify federal law. The senior senator from Texas is a good lawyer, and he's well aware of how limited that comparison is. I'm not arguing that states can override federal law. I'm arguing that President Trump is violating federal law.
He didn't stop there. Durbin accused Trump's administration of flat-out stonewalling. The Attorney General refused to give a legal reason for sending the troops. Homeland Security skipped oversight hearings. Even peaceful protesters, according to Durbin, were being swept up, while federal agencies dodged accountability.
Don't take my word for it. Judge Karen Immergut, a conservative Republican appointed to the federal bench by President Trump, blocked the deployment of the National Guard in Portland, Oregon. Listen to what she said, and I quote, and let me remind you again, a Trump appointee, quote, this country has long-standing and foundational tradition of resistance to government overreach, especially in the form of military intrusion into civil affairs. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. That's what the judge said. Or listen to Republican Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, another conservative. And he said, quote, Oklahomans would lose their mind if Governor Pritzker, in Illinois sent troops down to Oklahoma during the Biden administration. I'm sure they would have. And I'm sure at a guarded moment and by secret ballot, every member of this committee would agree. Here's the reality. The president's actions are about politics, not public safety. For the past 2 decades, the murder rate in red states has exceeded the murder rate in blue states. But the president is focused on Chicago, where violent crime is down dramatically. We should build on that success and work together, not undermine it. As I told the Attorney General, it is my job to ask fundamental questions about whether the federal government is following the law and Constitution. But she refused to tell me when I asked what was the legal basis for deploying the National Guard in Illinois. Instead, she launched irrelevant and false personal attacks. In more than 2 decades on this committee, I've never encountered a witness from any administration, Democrat or Republican, respond to legitimate oversight questions with personal attacks on the senators on this committee. That testimony by the Attorney General demonstrated the disdain she has for this committee and the constitutional responsibility we share to conduct oversight, regardless of the party in charge in the White House or Congress.
Then, the fireworks. Cornyn cut in and demanded specifics. What federal law did the president violate by sending the National Guard to Chicago? Durbin danced around it, arguing the real issue was authority, not a criminal act. But Cornyn wouldn't let it go. Is it illegal? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, we sent you a letter in June asking when Secretary Noem would appear before the committee. I hope, again, for the record, you'll make it clear that that is going to happen soon.
Senator Durbin, would you yield for a question?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
We don't
You
have
said
a
that you said the
schedule yet,
president
but we'll-
violated federal law, and what federal law did he violate by sending National Guard troops to Chicago?
Well, the question is, what federal law did he follow to send those troops, and he couldn't produce it in the court in Oregon?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
It's been contested as to whether he has the authority to send in the National Guard. In the court in Oregon, I just quoted the judge. There is no basis for his doing
Well,
so.
you didn't say what federal law, what law he violated. Is it illegal for him to send federal officials there to enforce
There are legal
federal law?
There are legal authorities for him to do it, and he hasn't been able to establish in court successfully that he's followed them.
I wish if you're
fact,
going to
he
accuse
keeps
the
threatening-
president of violating federal law, that you could actually tell us what law you
Well,
think he
I
violated.
asked the senator from Texas, why does he keep bringing up the Insurrection Act?
Well, he hasn't asserted any right under the Insurrection
For good
Act.
reason. There is no
But this
basis.
is, to answer your point about the border, in the absence of federal law enforcement along the border, or actually when the open border policies of the Biden administration were in place, Border Patrol was overwhelmed, so Governor Abbott sent National Guard and Department of Public Safety to the border to back up the border
Of his own
patrol,
state?
not to enforce the law,
State,
but to
Texas?
supplement their efforts so they would free them up so they could deal with the challenges that they had as a result of being overwhelmed.
Were these border areas in your state of Texas?
Say that again?
Durbin didn't have a direct answer, and Cornyn called him out. Cornyn backed up Trump, arguing Title 32 gave the president the right to deploy the Guard for federal missions. He accused Democrats of double standards, saying they just didn't like who was in the White House. Durbin fired back. Texas can send troops to its own border, but not across state lines. The room, dead, silent.
The border areas that the governor sent the National Guard to, were they in Texas?
Yeah.
Well, that's a totally different story than we're facing in Illinois.
Okay.
We,
Yeah,
Well, since I was referenced, I just would like to respond.
You want to speak to this issue, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, briefly. Well, specifically, the president has cited Title 32 authority to send the National Guard there. I can understand the sensitivity from my Democrat friend, because Democrats were on the wrong side of these issues. The Democrat governors opposed Reconstruction. The Democrat governors opposed desegregation, which I cited last week in Arkansas. And now they're on the wrong side of law, opposing the protection of American citizens and law enforcement who are doing their jobs, which is to enforce federal immigration law. The president has every authority to send the National Guard to protect those ICE agents and protect federal facilities. The fact that J.B. Pritzker wants to be known as sort of the resistance right now is not an excuse to say that the president's violating federal law. He's cited federal law. He's cited Title 32 in doing his job in protecting the American people. So,
Tempers flared. The chairman called for order, and Durbin slammed the attorney general's lack of answers as unprecedented. Cornyn stood firm. This was legal, and the outrage was pure politics. So, was sending the Guard to Chicago an abuse of power, or just enforcing the law? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit subscribe for more congressional drama, only on Hot News Today. Thanks for watching.